Can you guys see me?
Yeah, you
It just
disappeared.
kicked me off, and then it was replaying what we were just saying. So
Oh.
I could hear like from 5 minutes ago, and
Oh,
I was like, what just happened? My internet's good. I don't know why that did
yeah, you're like, where am
that.
I? Okay, everybody can see you. You're still frozen on my end,
I
but
am? Sage, am I
if I'm
frozen for you?
No, I can see
Okay.
everybody well.
okay,
Okay.
yeah.
Maybe I should sit back a little. It's a little scary that
I know I'm
getting
like
that close.
leaning in
Yeah.
like, to see everyone's comments. Okay. Oh, yay. Well, thank you, ladies, so much for coming on here, first of all.
You.
And
Yeah,
I
thank
think
you.
everyone obviously knows. Oh yeah, everybody's saying they can see both of you. Everything's good. So we're good to go.
Cool.
And I think everyone knows who you are, but just in case, since it's my page, just in case anybody's new to you, just sharing with everybody. So Serena and Sage are, they've become friends of mine over the years. They've both, done sessions with me, and they are the daughters of Dr. Wayne Dyer. Oh, and it's 333 right now on my phone. Sorry. Talking
I
about
love that.
signs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, it's funny because your dad's work, my grandmother read his books. She left them for my mom. My mom had me reading them in high school when I hated everyone and everything and was rebelling. So your dad's work has been in all of our life for so long. And, so I loved reading this. So for those of you who haven't yet, this is their book, The Knowing. And I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, right? It's all about the knowing and your inner knowing and connecting with their dad, from the afterlife, and not just him, but following their inner knowing and getting those signs and being open and, really living their life by this state of your inner intuition, instinct. I love that you say the knowing. That's what I call my inner knowing. I always say my inner knowing. So I think it's just the
Yeah.
best word that covers all that.
Well, we were going to actually title the book Remembering because we
Oh,
felt as though you have to remember your inner knowing in order to
yeah.
connect with it. That we all have it and we're all born with it. And then it's just,
Mm-hmm.
through the process of living life that you forget that connection is there and within you. And we start looking outside of ourselves for answers and solutions and all those different things. So we were actually going to call it Remembering. But then the knowing just kept coming up. I think actually you came up with the knowing, didn't you, Sage?
I don't know. It just kept sort of the stories that we would write, and when we would talk, it would all just sort of boil down to this inner knowing, and we felt
Mm-hmm.
like that explained it better than remembering. But they kind of mean the same thing. Like Serena was
Right.
saying, you live your life. You're born with this knowing, but life and society sort of shapes you to forget it, and you choose to tune back in, and it takes effort, and and all of that. So yeah, it came back down to being the knowing.
Yeah. I love it. I feel like it's the perfect word. And I mean, you all know me. I always love words like that can be applied to anybody's faith or background or, whatever that doesn't go against anyone's beliefs.
Right. Yeah, no, that would be bad.
Yeah. I mean, because people can, not that I know you both, so I know that you don't you kind of, I view both of you as you live from a place that almost transcends those separate beliefs, just from a place of oneness, really.
Yeah, I mean, our dad used to say, whatever you call it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that you're calling, whatever name you're calling it, could care less what you call it. It just wants to be called upon, right? It just wants to be brought into your life and connected to you, which connects you to everybody. But no, I don't think that any of us care about the name. But if anybody else does, we respect that as well. And we definitely used the knowing, the universe, God, consciousness,
right,
interchangeably.
Yeah,
And
like,
I
to
know
me,
you do
those
too.
are all the same.
Right. Yeah.
Like, they're all one source. And I love, like where you, like the quote, we didn't discover the knowing, we simply returned to it, kind of to what you were speaking to about the remembering.
right.
So
yeah, it's inherent. It's in every one of us. And it's just a matter of, our dad used to say, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, you know, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Like it was after our dad died, we both sort of felt like, or I'll speak for myself, that I felt like I was at a crossroads of, you know, am I going to let this be the worst thing that ever happened to me? And am I going to, you know, it was when my semester was due to start for school. Am I going to not go back to school? Am I going to be the victim? Or am I going to choose to see this as an opportunity to grow, to apply, you know, all these things that I was raised on from my dad and my mom, to apply it to my life? Because it was really the first time that I was challenged to, you know, it's easy to hear these things and they sound nice, but okay, now you're in it. Something's really happening in your life. Can you believe? Can you have faith? Can you tap into that knowing? And, you know, and that's, I felt like in the early days after he died, that's where I was kind of teetering on this. You know, I grew up with hearing all of these really spiritual principles, having really spiritual parents, but I was a believer, but I also think there was a skeptical side of me because, like I said, it just didn't ever really apply to me and I didn't have experience in it. So it was a choice. And I think for all of us, it's a choice at all times to just believe in a greater power, believe in your inner knowing, to have faith, you know, sort of like what you were saying. And it actually was that choice that started us on this path of writing this book and opened me up to miracles and signs and being open to having readings with people like you and things like that. And it, you know, it just made this into a beautiful experience where I feel that I still get to experience my father versus one where it was like all fear-based. This is the end. Death is the end, you know, and I'll never speak to my dad again, things like that. So it came down to being a choice for me.
Yeah. And that's so funny. So I love that you just like went in that, because I was like sitting here and I have all my notes and I was like, where should we start? You know, and I kind of got this hit, like, and this is how I read books. It's how I read all your dad's books. And it's, you know, how I was going through this one of just opening to a random page.
Right.
And it was the page of like, it was the chapter about you, Sage, and your experience, like there's no schedule for sorrow.
And that's also she wrote the part about choosing sooner as well. And and that kind of ties into what I was going to jump in and say, which was that which I wrote about, as you know, because you're mentioned there in that particular story, but having people that have said, I've never gotten a sign, so therefore I don't believe in it. And it's like, well, we were raised to be open to not just receiving them, but to know that the soul goes on, that this is just like shedding one coat, essentially, and going on without your body, but that the soul is still there. And so for us, there was no question that we were going to look for our dad and the signs and the communications and the messages from beyond. We were exposed to psychics and mediums. I was in touch with you, I think, for the first time around the time that my dad died. Is that right? Or maybe a little bit even beforehand. But I guess my point is that we have been exposed to psychics and mediums and all these different ideas since we were little kids. So it was never something that we doubted. And we have had people say, I don't get those signs. I don't get the same things that you get. And our experience is, are you looking? Do you believe? Because we were raised to know that you'll see it when you believe it, that you have to get in alignment with what it is that you are seeking. And if you're closed off to it, afraid, full of grief or fear or sorrow, you're not going to be in alignment with where your loved one is, right? Which is love and joy and So
yeah. Now,
I don't know
did you
why I went on
either of
that
you,
tangent,
I
but
mean, yeah, you
Yeah.
both, I love how much you share in this book about your experiences of like getting the news of, you know, really like you share so openly about your grief and each of your experiences moving through grief and connecting with your dad and all of that. And I love that so much, like how openly they, like, you don't just skip to the part where it's happy and you're getting the signs. Like, I really appreciated that, you taking us all through your process with it, because I feel like in the beginning when it's a sudden loss like that, like I know so many of my clients, you know, say like there's that shock factor that
right.
can kind of block, you know, the signs. So I guess my question for, you know, for both of you would be, did you experience a time, you know, even with, you know, and kind of like the choose sooner chapter, you know, I guess, and a time where you felt distanced, I guess, from him, or a little bit like where you really had to like choose more consciously, or like really like, you know, kind of overcome that separation that we know doesn't really exist, but you know, to
Yeah.
really choose to believe.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely did, especially, and I still do at times. I mean, to be honest, there are times where I feel disconnected from my dad, from just spirituality in general, you know. But kind of what I was touching on in how the Choose Sooner chapter, how it came about, was I remember I was in the shower, and it was in the early days after our dad had passed away, and I was just deep in my grief and really feeling it, which, by the way, is important. And we all, you know, that's why we start the book with the grief that we were experiencing, because that's part of the process. And I'm not here to say that you shouldn't be sad and feeling those feelings, because you absolutely should be.
Right.
But I was in the shower, and I was thinking about how, you know, I was just in it. I was thinking how awful this is, and then I had this instinct of like, call dad. And that kept happening in those early days. I would just think like, somewhere in my conscious mind, my subconscious would just tell me to call dad, because my whole life, that's what I would have done in a situation like that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then I would have this like realization, like it would have to hit me all over again. You're never going to do that again. You're never going to be able to call dad again. And then the tears would flow, and the grief, and it would just be too much. And I remember that I was in the shower, and that happened again. And I thought, okay, Sage, you can't keep going down this same road. You know, you've got to start choosing a different way to look at this. So I said to myself, you know, you can't call dad. You're never going to call dad again. But you have a lifetime of knowing him and being raised by him and loved by him and loving him. What would he say to you right now? Or what have you heard him say to other people who have grieved, you know? And I sort of got this like inner knowing, or, you know, somebody spoke to me in my mind of saying, you know, he said to me, or whoever said to me,
Mm-hmm.
like I said already before, I touched on this, but it's, you know, you have a choice right now. You can continue to go down these fear-based, this is the end, death is final, never again, you know, all those thoughts that you have, I'll never call you again. You can continue down that line of thinking, and you'll just stay where you are. And that's okay. And there's no judgment on that. Or you can start to choose a different way to look at this. And you can start to apply, you know, all the things I taught about. You can read my books and listen to my, you know, and I started to feel sort of like a hint of excitement by this idea of like, wait, I can see this differently. I can start to get to know him in a different way. I can see this as a challenge to find him in my life, his presence in my life. And in that moment I was, that still exists, his presence in my life that still exists, even though he was physically gone. And I was reminded of this story that he used to tell in his talks, about a man who, his son was at war, and his son, and he it was like back in the olden days, I'm not sure, the man got a knock on his door saying that his son had died in combat. And And the man was immediately grief stricken. But later that night, he went into town and he was at a party and he was dancing. And everyone in the town knew that he had just gotten this news that his son had died in war. And so somebody went up to him and she said, I don't understand. How could you be here dancing? You just learned that your son died. And he said, his response was, sooner or later, I'm going to have to move on from this or it will kill me. It will be the end of me. And I am just choosing sooner. And I remembered that story and I hadn't heard it in a long time. It just sort of came to me and I thought, like, I'm going to start choosing sooner. And that doesn't mean choosing sooner every second, you know, it still comes. But it means, like, at the times where you're feeling strong and that it's okay to choose sooner. It was also permission for me, you know, like I had been kind of wondering, am I going to go back to school or is it too soon? My semester had already, it was starting like 3 days later. And I thought, like, is it too soon? And are people going to judge me for moving on that quickly? Like, but what am I going to do for the next 5 months if I don't go? And I thought, no, I don't need anyone. And I can choose sooner, you know, and I can deal with school and my grief. And it was the right choice for me. And it might not be for everybody, but, and so anyway, that moment started me on a path, which led to signs that, you know, that we share in the book, and any that you want to hear here, I'm happy to share. But
yeah, and I had a similar experience, I would say, but as I said in the book, when I was on the phone, right, when we were at my mom's house, so we were all kind of there, but it was my phone that was, like, you know, had called Dee, and so I was getting this live, that sorry, my husband is watching, and so I'm telling him the kids are banging on the door. It's the one job you have. I told him the kids
yeah, he commented that they're, like, pointing, you know, and, like, they're like, Mom and Aunt Sage are on the
yeah, and I literally just side text him, help, the kids are banging on the door, and they're still banging on the door. So anyway, so what happens when you have 3 kids in 3.5 years.
Yeah, it's
but anyway, I remember my first moment alone, which was after we left my mom's house, after kind of like the shock and having to, like, tell Sage and listen as my mom told our brother Sands and tell my sister Tracy, and that was all a lot of adrenaline, I think, because of being on the call when we discovered that he had died. There was a lot of adrenaline for me, at least there, because I was still thinking there was something that was going to happen, that he didn't die. When I got home, and that was really my first moment alone, I remember distinctly having this feeling of being pissed, like mad at him, like genuinely mad at him. Like, I can't believe you did this to us, because I immediately knew that he was still here. And I remember I had dinner with him and Anita Moorjani, who had the near-death experience. And as she crossed over, as she died when she had cancer, she was experiencing from the other side all of her family members in different parts of the world at the same time, kind of receiving the news that, like, she wasn't going to make it, or that she was, like, took a turn for the worse, or she was experiencing all of the people that she loved kind of simultaneously. And so anyway, she came back. Anybody that follows Anita knows that she came back, and she's now talks all about that. But I had a feeling that he was going to be there, right? Like, with me, or with my whole family at my mom's house while we were getting that news. And I was, like, mad at him that we were getting that news, because I really felt and kind of knew that he would be seeing us getting that call. And I was kind of just like, how could you do that? And I remember, and I wrote in the book that the one phrase going through my mind over and over was, I can't believe you pulled it off. And I really thought that for a while, that I could not believe that he pulled it off, because he has such a flair for drama, as you know, from doing readings with him, and he can be very dramatic, and I always felt like it just was never something that was going to happen to him. or to either one of my parents, that they were larger than life for me. And so the fact that he actually died, it really was shocking. And I was like pissed at him for a while in the beginning.
Yeah.
But I also was really excited to have the understanding that I could still communicate with him if I got in alignment with where he was. And that would be the only way I could like line up my energy to feel him and to experience him and to continue having a relationship from the other side. And so I did.
Yeah. That's so, and usually in my readings, like spirit will show me that they do go, and that they are around when you get the news, because they want to like try to help everyone be okay. So, that's, I could totally see him there, like taking your anger. Did you feel like in how him, like it's okay for you to be, I mean, not that it's ever not okay for anybody to feel anything, of course, but like, did you feel like I can just be pissed at him and he'll be fine?
Oh yeah, I knew that he would be loving it. He would probably be like, what did you think? I was going to live forever and you're going to die too one day. And when you get over here, I'm going to kick your ass. Like he probably was thinking that, we had a very comfortable, loving relationship where he would have probably been getting a kick out of the fact that I was pissed. I mean, I was heartbroken, but I just couldn't believe that he pulled it off, because I just thought that wasn't something that he was ever going to do.
I took comfort in the fact that both of our parents have my whole life talked about how death is just the next great adventure. And both of them have always been fascinated by near-death experiences like Anita's that Serena said. So I knew that this wasn't anything he feared. I knew that it was something like, I had just been in Australia and New Zealand with him for 3 weeks. Like I got home 2 days before he passed away. And he spoke like maybe 10 times on that 3-week trip. And every talk, it was based around how, we come from love, we return to love. We come here with a round trip ticket. We were born on time and we leave on time. So I was like marinating in all of that before this. So a part of me was, excited for him, not excited for him. It's not the right way to say it, but just knowing that he was on to that next great adventure. Like Serena said, he pulled it off, he got there. And so there was a part of me that knew that this was, something that he was so interested in, that he was now getting to experience it, was comforting for me.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I felt too. Like the pulled it off is kind of like, if you have a big like scheme or heist that you're planning and you are successful at it, it's like, I can't believe you pulled it off. I was just shocked that he actually did it, because like Sage said, I knew that he looked forward to it, and that he embraced death. And the idea that the soul is, having a human experience, and this is the classroom, and the other side is home, and that he was just going to go home, or as Ram Dass would say, we're all just walking each other home. Like I knew that he really felt that. We lived that. So that wasn't like a reach. We didn't have to like try to hope that he was okay. We knew he was ecstatic. I was just pissed that he did it. I wasn't ready. That's all.
You're like, you could have given me like a few more years. Like, come on.
Yeah. Like I just had a baby. Like we have all this stuff happening. Like I could have had a little bit of a warning maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like that's how people, I know I just did a reading like a week or two ago, for someone, and like it was so hard for her to understand how it was her father who had passed, and it was so hard for her to get that he was like having a ball over there. Like he was like, so he's like, everyone's here. Like, like he came through like so happy. And it was interesting because I was like feeling his happiness, like coming through me. And he was like introducing me to people, like just this really happy man, like, not quite as vibrant of energy as your dad, but but he was close. And she like could not, it was almost felt like she was still in the really heaviness of the grief so it was like having to kind of channel and like integrate those energies like on my part was interesting.
Yeah. And I've seen that with people that are
Mm-hmm.
committed to their grief because
Yep.
they feel as though if they are not grieving and sad, and in the olden days, it would even be wearing black for the rest of your life. If you were not in grief, you were not honoring
Mm-hmm.
their life, and you weren't missing them enough, or you didn't love them enough. And our mom and dad raised us to think the opposite, that you love them so much, which is why you know that love is the only thing that's going to keep you connected to everything that it is you desire, including connecting with people on the other side. Committing to grief is like worrying, right? It's like filling your mind with things you don't want to have show up in your life. You're not going to connect with the people that you lost by convincing yourself that you must stay sad just because somebody told you that or you bought into the idea. And I'm not saying you're not sad, right?
Mm-hmm. It's almost like you can feel like both at the same time, right?
Yeah, I think you can feel both, and I think you can commit to just viewing it in a different way. Like when your mind, I just saw someone said she had dreams, about she would be yelling at her mother. I had dreams like that too, where I was either mad at my dad, yelling at him for dying, telling him, or so sometimes they were angry. Others, they were like me just finding him and saying, oh my God, you're still alive. We've been thinking you were dead this whole time, but you were just over here in wherever, and I found you. And really what those kinds of dreams are it's your subconscious is telling you haven't fully accepted this yet, and that's okay, and that's normal. But it's still fear-based thinking around death, around loss, and I think that can coexist with
and
choosing to see it as a miracle. And when you can just lean on the side of choosing to see it as a miracle, the miracles start to show up, the signs start to show up, you start to see the meaning behind it. I mean, we had a number of things that we reflected on after that showed us that this was his perfect time, because he did this and he set this up a certain way and he told us this, and there were so many incredible things for each of his kids and my mom and everyone who loved him independently. We had really incredible things that let us know that he knew his time was coming on some level, because he set it up,
Yes. And let me just say really quick, because she just said he knew his time was coming. There was somebody that took kind of issue with us saying that we come on time and we leave on time, and was sort of arguing that because our dad was 75 years old and he lived this full life, it's easy to come to that conclusion. But for anybody that has read
email,
so for anybody that has read, oh, go ahead.
No, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, for anybody that has read our book or hasn't read our book, but I'm friends with on Instagram or whatever, that my stepson passed away at 19. That's not 75, and it was an accident that caused his death. And I can tell you that my husband, his father, who raised him his entire life, had full custody, the whole thing. I mean, this was his only child before we got married and had more children. He also felt as though it was Mason's time. Because what is the choice? Are you going to go through the rest of your life and think that God does favors for some and withholds from others, and that you live in a world where accidents can happen and your child can die? Or are you going to choose to view it as divinely orchestrated beyond our understanding, but find peace in that? And ultimately, anybody could argue and say that we really don't know, right? Now, I know I know that you, as Sarah Renee, know, because you're an incredible psychic medium. So I know that you know that the soul lives on. But for people that say, how do you know, or what's your proof, or I don't believe in any of that, okay. But which one gives you peace? And why would you choose something that for the rest of your life, you're never going to have 100% guaranteed scientific proof, right?
Mm-hmm.
But why would you choose the one that takes you further from God? If God is peace and God is the creator of all of us, I don't know. I could never imagine. And that's why I have so much admiration for my husband, because to lose a child is a completely different experience than to lose a parent. And
Mm-hmm.
the fact that he was right away able to say, I know that Mason lived the full life that he came here to live, and that 19 years was what his soul needed in this lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. In fact, he just got it faster than we do, because we're slow and he was fast.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, but why wouldn't you choose to view it that way?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't view it that way at first. I felt extremely guilty. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I just felt like I deserved nothing, because I knew that there had been a lot of times where I had pushed him away as his stepmom, who was only 13 years older than him. We fought like brother and sister. And anyway, that guilt was all consuming. And it was my husband, it was Matt, who said to me, after your dad died, you knew that in order to connect with him, you had to elevate your energy. You had to become like where he was, which was love or joy or peace. You had to become like that in order to find him. Why are you not doing that with Mason? And I said, I don't feel worthy. I don't feel worthy of connecting with him. But my husband kept encouraging and encouraging. And that was, I mean, it was a life-changing moment for me, because when I started to think about Mason, not from the place of guilt, but apply the love that I had toward my father when he passed away, it was all just wonderful. I wasn't doing that with Mason. But when I started to do that, he came to me in a dream. I know you and I have talked about it. And he came to me in a dream, and he said, I mean, he would just look beautiful, and he was glowing, and he was, there was nothing about him that was feeling like he got cut short his years on earth. It was like he was so happy to be where he was. And I mean, it makes me emotional. It makes my mouth dry. I feel nervous. Just, it was, I don't know. It was just him saying to me that I love you, and I would never hold any of the little fights that we had or the dramas that we had against you. And I'm so happy here, and you'll be here one day and we'll talk about it. And I was just like, wow, okay. I feel a lot better now.
Yeah. Something that came to me while Serena was saying that about, I did an interview a couple of weeks ago, and I was asked, but how do you actually know? How do you know for sure that your dad is giving you these signs, or that he's communicating with you, or that he's still there? Like, how can you really know? And I don't know what I said in the moment, but I thought about it after, and I was like, you know, you don't ever, Serena was touching on this, you don't ever really, really know, but you can choose in life to view everything as though it's a miracle or as though it's not, and it's your choice. And because what Serena was saying, that I got an email after I did this interview, and the woman said, what if it's a child? How? And it's so different. And I don't pretend to sit here and know what that's like. I mean, but I do think there's a method of going about it that brings you peace, and there's a method that's going to keep you stuck and down and not able to experience life in a beautiful way again. If you're still here, you're meant to be experiencing life. You know, if your loved one left, we have to deal with that and find the peace in it so that you can still experience the life that you still need to experience, you know, because I truly believe that we come here with this round trip ticket, you know.
And just to jump in really quick, because I think this is really crucial with what you're saying right now. It's that, like, you know, we wrote all about in our book about how our dad had paid Sage's tuition in advance, and it was kind of like he had this internal knowing that his time was coming to an end. And what I want to say, that I don't even know if you know this, or if you remember this, Sarah, but you sent me a Facebook message 4 days before Mason died. And you said, and you said,
like, I forgot
that, you said to me, I mean, I know we talked about it like years ago when it first happened. because you did a reading with Matt and brought Mason, you know,
Mm-hmm.
through to us and all of that. But you actually sent a message to me before, and my husband's on here commenting, so he can confirm this, before Mason died. And you said that there was somebody that was insisting you reach out to me, and it was a friend of my husband's. And you said his name was John or Johnny, or it was a name like that. And you said, and he's wearing a gold chain, and he is really outgoing and like funny. And he is saying, Serena, that he just wants your husband to know that he is going to be all around him and that he's with him. And I read this message to my husband in the car, and my husband lost his best friend, Johnny Man, years before. I never met Johnny Man. This was before he knew me. Wow. But Matt and Mason, when Mason was a little boy, and Matt, as I said, had full custody of him, they lived with Johnny. They were roommates and raising Mason as like two frat dads. Like,
oh my gosh.
And Johnny loved each other. He was like another father for him. And I thought, when I read your message, and my husband sobbed in the car when I read it to him and said, like, oh my God, Johnny's all around me. I can't believe that. I thought, and Matt thought, that this was because he was going through his trial and we were coming up to his sentencing. And we thought that this was relating to his legal stuff, and that he was just letting us know that during this really difficult time in Matt's life that he was with us. When Mason passed away, and I went back and I reread that message, and Mason passed away, like, honestly, I think it was 4 days later. I knew in my gut, I knew that Johnny was letting us know that he was getting ready to welcome Mason.
I have the chills.
And
yeah,
I feel like I'm going to cry. And I think that it's really easy to say that our dad, who was 75 and this spiritual guy, knew, you know, because he's Wayne Dyer. Of course he knew he was going to die. He's Wayne Dyer.
Of course he was like.
Right. But Mason was 19.
Yeah.
And he had an accidental drug overdose. And he didn't have the full 75 years, obviously. And I think that his soul and Johnny's knew that Johnny was getting ready to bring him home. And I think that's why you sent me that message. It wasn't just that Johnny from the other side knew. I think it was Mason. Because the last conversation I had with Mason was one, in hindsight, that was very unusual for us, where he said, and give those girls a hug for me, because I love them more than anything. And he was talking about Sailor and Windsor. And that was not something that would be part of our conversation normally. And I think that actually it doesn't matter if you're Wayne Dyer and 75 or 95 or you're 19. I think that your soul on some level, or at least I choose to believe that his soul on some level knew that his time in the classroom was over, because he got the lessons he came here to get, and he was ready to go home.
Yeah. And some souls, like, because, you know, bringing through young people, like people's children, you know, transition it's definitely painful. It's a certain emotional, you know, part of that that's more difficult than other sessions, for sure. But something that they all, you know, talk about is like that they got so much in such a short time, or that they, you know, they learned what they had to learn. Like, you know, like they're not, once they're transitioned, like they're not in pain, like they're not over there like pissed because they got short in life, you know. Like they're like, I'm done. I waited before you.
And I remember actually hearing, I'll shut up after this, but I remember actually hearing somebody ask Anita that at a talk about how they had because Anita had stage 4 cancer and came back and her tumors shrunk and she was healthy. And it was somebody in the audience that said that her mom had lost her battle with cancer, and she couldn't be at peace because her mom really fought so hard to live. And I remember Anita saying something that really like sort of stuck with me, which was that um, she didn't lose. She didn't lose anything. She gained just before we think it's her time, but it actually was her time. She gained her welcome home party. You know, she crossed over at the time. She didn't lose the battle, because life is not the victory. It's just the classroom. At least that's the way we were raised by our mom and dad. Yeah. And our mom is on here, and our dad, I'm sure, is on here too. And
yeah, so he's directing this whole thing.
Yeah, before my dad passed away, Serena said this quickly, but I'll just explain it a little more. I was in graduate school, and my dad had committed to putting me through graduate school. You know, he said he would pay for it, and he'd always given me my tuition in the same way every semester. And I know how blessed I am to have a father who could pay for graduate school and all of that for me. And so he would give me the money to pay my own tuition and to live off of for the semester, you know, right as the semesters were starting. The semester before he passed away, like that January, he passed away in August, he gave me a check for that semester. But then he called me a couple days later and said, I just mailed you a check for your 4 remaining semesters for 2 more years of graduate school. And I want you to deposit it and hold on to that money and make sure that, you know, you put it aside and use it for your tuition. And I was really taken back on the phone call, and I was like, Dad, why? That's so much money. I mean, I was going to NYU. I lived in New York City. It was a lot of money. And I was uncomfortable by it. You know, I was grateful, but I was uncomfortable. And I was like, why are you doing that? That's so unnecessary. And it makes me like, let's just keep doing it the way we've been doing it.
And the way he did it for all of Sage's older siblings, which there's 7 of us. So
he's always done it the same exact way, 1 semester at a time. And he insisted that I deposit the check, and that he was very serious on the call. He wasn't being his normal, like, funny self. He wasn't making jokes. He was like, just do it. And I kept saying, okay, but why? Why are you doing it differently this time? And he said, because if anything were to happen to me, I want to make sure that you have the money to finish this school, because I said I would put you through graduate school. And it was always really important to our dad that he keep his word. That's one of the biggest things I remember about him. If he said he was going to do something, he did it. And I called my mom right after the call, and I remember I said, you know, Dad's being so weird, and he's sending me the check for all this. And she took his side and said, you go deposit that check, do what he says, honey, don't, whatever. So I thought she was going to say he's being dramatic or whatever, but she was like, no, you should listen to him. So I literally like opened a separate checking account. So I didn't like think I had all this money that needed to last me a very long time. And, you know, and then when he passed away in August, that would have been around, you know, he may not have given me another check for that semester, maybe not, but at that point, certainly not for the rest of them. And I reflected back on that, and I thought, you know, that's in January, so 9-10 months before he actually passed away. His soul was preparing, you know, his soul was preparing and fulfilling the commitments that that he had come here and committed himself to, which was putting all of his kids through as much school as they wanted to go to. That was one thing that he was really adamant about doing.
Yeah.
And when I realized that, I remembered that, and we talked about it as a family, I was, you know, brought to tears, and I was comforted in such a way that, like, it has to be on purpose. If he knew, you know, it can't be an accident. If he already knew, his soul was already preparing. And there were other things too. I mean, the last text message that he sent to me and to my sister Sky, it was in a group text message, but it was really profound and indicated that he said something like, he was leaving Australia, flying back to Hawaii, and I was, Sky and I were leaving the next morning to go back to the East Coast. So we were on different flights, and he texted us from the airport and said something like, phase 1 is now complete. What was the other part?
This long eviction.
Yeah, something about this long eviction. I look forward to some rest from this long eviction. Phase 1 is now complete. And he's just sending us this text from the airport lounge. And me and my sister look at each other when we get it, Sky and I, and we're like, what is he talking about? You know, and we both were a little bit like, phase one is now complete. What does that mean? And rest from this long eviction. Eviction from what? And but then we carried on in the conversation. He said, I love you. He said, I'm so proud of you guys. I had so much fun. So, you know, I kind of let that part of it go. After he died, 48 hours later, you know, I was reading any message I could to find meaning. And I came back across those messages and I said, oh my God, long eviction from, he's talking about this long eviction from God, you know, from your knowing, from really knowing your knowing, you know, because I think these physical bodies at times, I mean, not at times, all the time, they keep us a little bit separate, and you have to have the faith. And I think then when you cross over, you don't ever have to question it anymore, because you just know, because you're a part of it. I mean, as you know, and some of us can know it more here. Mm-hmm. And then when he said phase one is now complete, he had spoken about to his friend D and our friend D about phase one versus phase two, and he was referring to phase one as life and phase two as the afterlife. And she told me that, and I said, but look, he said phase one is now complete. He knew that his time was complete. And discovering that was another thing that at the time of Choose Sooner and all of that it started to get the ball rolling for me. Like, okay, this isn't an accident. This is on purpose. You need to believe. You need to have faith. You need to start looking for him here, because he's here ready to give you.
Well, and I mean, you brought him through for Sage and I, so you have felt his energy. And I mean, I know that he is like, you know, funny and has this great energy and all that, but I mean, does he feel like, because I don't get the messages the way you do. Does he feel like I mean, do people that have crossed over, forget about him, just anybody in general, do they feel heavy and sad, or is it light? I mean,
99.9% of the time it's light. It's very rare. When they feel heavy, it's usually something where it was someone who really refused to learn their lessons, you know, and they're like back at school, like even more school over there. So, and even then it's not, I don't think it's the heaviness that people think. It's just like in comparison to like your dad, for me, it feels sometimes a little heavier. But most of the time, my heavy readings are because there's like a heavy situation with my living client. And it's like spirits like making jokes. Like they're like cracking up about things, like trying to lighten the energy, because they don't have the separation, you know, just like you said, like they don't have the ego, like our egos die with our body. So they're
Thank
just
God.
Like, right? Like be done with all that. Like, so they're like elevated or kind of, you know, lifted up out of any, you know, struggles or like lessons that they maybe got stuck in, you know, while they were here. So yeah, they're
I've
always
seen where like
happy.
Well, I've seen where like you've helped solve crimes, and I always wonder, is the person who died, are they assisting because they can see that the resolution is important for the loved ones left behind, or is it because it's important to them? You know, like I always wondered about that. I've always wanted to ask you that. Sorry, I know that's maybe not on the same topic, but I've seen you do that where you help people solve crimes, and I'm like, is the person who passed attached still, or is it they just want to help the person who's still living?
Usually it's to help the person that's still living, to maybe stop the person from harming others. And because there's it's different, like when we think justice, like, you know, it's like, okay, you do this and you pay for it. When they see justice, it's more of they need to learn the lesson. Like it's less, not that we seek justice for revenge, but there's less of that like vengeful kind of tone, like punishment. It's more of like, well, if you killed me, so you obviously have to like learn this lesson.
Right.
You know, because like you're in Earth School, like that's why you're here.
Right. Like a karmic energy type of thing. Seems like
like it's not out of anger. And I've had sessions where someone was killed and where they've said, you know, don't feel like you have to give your life to like trying to find my, you know, the person who killed me. Like they're going to learn their lesson some other way. Like we want you to just move forward.
Yeah. I mean, I love that because it's like giving revenge or serving up someone's extra dose of karma is not your job. You know, it's like, it's kind of like the same thing with like being committed to grief for the rest of your life. It's not your job.
Well, our
It's
dad
like,
always said, you know, it's not his quote, but he would say to us, there are no justified resentments. You know, it doesn't, because first of all, it only serves to bring you down, you know,
right.
the first point. But you can go on telling yourself over and over again, it's their fault, it's that I'm this way because of you. That's not going to get you anywhere. You need to just get yourself, you know.
Yeah, it's like I'm sober, and in my recovery, like we do like a resentment inventory, and that's what like
that quote's from.
Funny.
It's an LW quote. Yeah.
Yeah, because like I saw that in myself. I'm like, this isn't hurting anybody else that harmed. Like the only person this is hurting is me. Like, why am I holding on to this?
Blame whoever you want. I think Oprah said it's not what your mama did, it's not what your dad didn't do, and you know, all of that. You can go on and on about all of that. It's just going to keep you stuck. And I think that's relatable to grief as well. You know, it's the same thing. Like you can keep going over in your mind, what if I did this? And you know, because like I said, I also have dreams where I was like, I was there with him, so I was able to call 911. You know, things like that. Like you're just constantly. But those kinds of thoughts are keeping you stuck.
Right.
You know? Life is about growth, I think. It's about expansion and growth and letting our spirits and helping others and serving others. And that leads to more growth. And so I think you have to work on yourself. You know, you can't blame anybody else in those situations, in any situation.
Yeah. And like you said, it always comes back to that choice of like choosing to be mad that you've lost this person in the physical. You know, it holds you back from experiencing them in the spiritual. I was
sorry.
It's Sailor. It's Matt. It's our daughter coming in again on the door. Sorry.
My son's tried to come in like 4 times now.
I'm side texting him like knives. Like
they're like,
yeah, but I was gonna say, I think it's a surrendering process. We write a lot about surrendering in the book, and it's like, you know, you can choose to process life as it is and not as you think it should be. You know, and that's sort of this same idea of surrendering. And life, I think, responds from there when you get to that place. But when you are resisting, you know, I get a lot out of this idea of not resisting. I could tell a quick story. I don't know if we're running out of time, but the song I Hope You Dance by Leanne Womack. Yeah.
I love that.
Most people know that song. It's like a feel good, beautiful song. And I remember I was with my dad in the car, and that song came on, and he said, you know, I agree with every line in this song except one. Can you figure out which one? And so we listened to the song, and I don't think I figured it out. But afterwards, he said, it's the, you know, because it's all these lines of, I hope you never fear those mountains in the distance, never lose your sense of wonder. It's like, you know, beautiful. Everything is true. But there's one line that says, I hope you never settle for the path of least resistance. And
he disagreed with that.
Yeah, he said that's the only line in that song I disagree with, because you should always take the path of least resistance. You know, when the universe is offering you resistance, you should take a look at that resistance, you know, and say, okay, what do I need to change here? What do I need to be doing differently? Maybe this isn't the right path for me to be going down. You know, so I always try to remember that, because there's so many times in life where like everything lines up. And it's like with this book, I mean, the book that The Knowing, Serena and I doing it just kept going into place, and the right people kept coming into our lives and helping us, and the right publishing company. And
and even you were like, Serena, you're going to be doing this work. And I was like, oh God, no, I'm not. I'm like really far away from that. But I mean, even you were like, you got to keep doing this. You've got to write. Your dad is saying, you know, like, Sage, Serena, you got to write. You got to keep this message going forward. And we were both kind of like, hesitant, I guess. And that's
Yeah,
just our ego, right?
And
Yeah.
for me, it honestly took getting pregnant with my son, my first one, which, by the way, I'm like 9 months pregnant right now. So if anyone's wondering what this is sticking out up here. But with my first son, it was so I got pregnant and I had all these thoughts of like, I'm never going to have a career. This book that we had started writing but stopped is never going to happen now. But in reality, it was finding out that I was pregnant that pushed me to push Serena and myself to get in touch with the literary agent and get this thing moving, because I knew what we had written was important. And in my mind, I thought, I have a 9-month ticking time bomb till my life is over. And I need to get this work done. And so that's when we made it all happen and we got the book deal. And in reality, it turns out none of that was true in the end, because I can still have a career and have one child, 2 children, whatever, as many children as I want. But that was my belief at the time. And so it was sort of like this was put into my life, getting pregnant sort of unexpectedly. I don't want to act like I don't know what I was doing, but like it just happened very quickly. And that happening and surrendering to that notion, and stop resisting it, and that led us to getting this book going, you know?
Right, because the path of least resistance is the path of what our dad used to say all the time, I send you all green lights. It's the path of being in flow. You know when you're in flow, in harmony with the universe, because you get all the green lights. It's like all of a sudden this person calls you and this shows up, and then the check for the exact amount that you needed, and Sarah Renee sends you a message before he passed away. I mean, it's like all of a sudden you're in a certain space where there's no resistance, and that's where you're in flow with the universe. And it's like when you take the path of the most resistance, or when you think, I don't want to settle for the easy way out, that's just your ego. You're just totally creating like a judgment to place on something to like convince yourself that like you worked hard, or like, I don't know, some BS thing that you don't need to do. Like get in the flow, and you'll know you're in the flow when the green lights start happening for you. And you're like, oh my God, everything is working out in my favor. I can't believe that everything is just falling into place. And it's like, of course it's falling into place. You're in harmony with it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But if you're not in alignment, go ahead.
Sorry. I was gonna say, I feel like it's like cheating at life is what I call it. Like that's where like I start to feel like, just with all the signs and all the guidance, like it's almost becomes this feeling of like I'm cheating at life. But then Spirit's like, no, but this is like how it's supposed to be. Like,
right. Right. And you're guiding other
people's lives.
Exactly. You're teaching other people how to tune into that way of, because I just think there's a way, like what Serena was just saying, that there's a way in life when you're flowing, and there's a way when you're not. And we've all experienced both. I think we should strive to experience that flow, because and if you're in it more than others, then you just teach them how to do that, and you can only,
and that's what our mom has done
herself. Yeah,
that's exactly what our mom has done. I mean, we wrote about it in our book, but she had 7 natural childbirths with no pain medication. Yeah, no, I've had 0 natural childbirths, and I can tell you my half attempt at one was enough to make me know I'll never do it again. Epidural all day, baby. But no, I'm just kidding. Not really though. But this is a woman who was able to go into a meditative trance when her body was going through just the most pain she could experience. And she has done that. I mean, she broke her cheekbone one time, and we were in the ER, and the ER doctor said, you are the most peaceful patient I have ever had. Please, I will stay here all night. Tell me your secrets.
Not just her cheekbone. She shattered her shoulder and her elbow one time. She fell down a spiral staircase home alone. She was carrying a basket, and one handle broke. It was like a laundry basket full of a bunch of stuff. One handle broke, and it caused her to lose her balance. She fell onto concrete, shattered her whole side of her body and her arm. And they didn't even treat her with priority at the hospital because she wasn't acting like she was in enough pain. And when they
she was just
finally
like
got
silent.
the X-ray, they apologized. They said, "Oh, you should have been airlifted here. You should be on morphine right now. Your whole arm is shattered. You know, how are you just dealing with this sitting here?" And it's through breath. And I'm trying to learn.
But what she has done though is she has taught other people now.
Yeah.
I mean, she has taught, and that's exactly what we were saying. You know, it's like when you have, when you're in the flow, or when you have a gift, as clearly you do, or when she has a gift, as clearly she does. I mean, it's your job, I think. I mean, I don't talk to spirit the way you do, so you tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it's your job to help others. Yeah, to teach others. And you do that, and she does that. And I think that's why she's so in flow, because she gives it all away. She just could not be more excited to just give away all of the wisdom that she contains within herself to anybody that wants to hear her talk about meditation. It's like this woman sees somebody in need and would, I mean, I'm not just exaggerating, she would truly pull over to give them everything in her wallet every time. It's like her whole life is, how may I serve? And that's why she is, you know.
I love her too. And her reading,
me too.
It's amazing. And she is so, like, I feel like she is like the living, breathing example of like meditation, like of peace and just acceptance and non-judgment. Like, she's just so loving. And it's not an act, like, I can tell.
I believe you.
No, her presence, her energy, our whole life has just been a constant source of love and support and non-judgment, you know, in a different way from what our dad was in our lives. And, you know, and I can't tell you what that gives to, you know, especially now we're parents, you know, seeing that, I'm like, oh, geez, am I going to be able to do that? Because it's a lot, and it gives you so much as a child growing up with that kind of love.
Now, I remember, Sage, I was going to ask you if you even know anything about this or not, but I remember doing a reading, I think, for your mom. And I feel like it was right before you had your first.
Yes, I do remember, because she told me some of the things that you told her.
Didn't they tell her to tell you not to, like, cling on to having, like, a natural birth or something?
Yeah.
So when I read this story, because I never followed up, I don't think, like,
right.
And I was like, oh, like, that makes sense, like, when I read about it in the book.
Yeah, so my mom didn't want to tell me that beforehand because she didn't want to put in my head that something was going to go wrong. But I had a childbirth from hell, to be honest. And it was not what I pictured. I mean, everybody was fine and healthy, so that's what mattered. But I had taken hypnobirthing classes. I was trying to be like my mom and like
me too.
Interventions and blah blah blah. I ended up having conditions that I didn't know I had, and had to have every intervention that you can think of. I mean, I didn't have a C-section, but I so many drugs and so many things that they had to do. And yes, my mom told me after, you know, Sarah Renee told me everything's going to be okay, but her birth is not what she thinks it's going to be. You know, it's going to be serious. And it did become very serious. I remember the doctor saying to me, I tried to resist some of these drugs. I didn't want my baby getting drugs in his system. And the doctor said, you're in a life or death situation. This isn't about, you know, your preferences. And I was like, okay. And I took that as a call to surrender, because what choice did I have? And the goal was to have a healthy baby. But yeah, you had picked up on that beforehand.
Yeah. And I remember, I think I was thinking about that because your mom, because I think sometimes parents can, with love, like, and with good intentions, like, project. And I remember how she was talking about how she went through natural childbirth. So you wanted to, you know, do the same thing. But she had zero judgment when that came through. She was like, I just want her and the baby to be okay. Like, that's all that mattered. And I remember, like, just really, like, having so much respect for her in that moment.
Always. Yeah. That's why we've all had her there for all of our births, because she doesn't project. I mean, Sky, our sister, has been like our mom and has managed to have 2 natural
And Sky was the most afraid of having children because she didn't want the pain. Sky has had natural, no epidural pain, childbirths.
Oh
Meanwhile,
so funny.
Miss Arrogant over here was like, I can definitely do it. Like, I'm going to be fine. No, failed immediately. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I went quite a while.
Yeah, she went a while. She went like 18 hours without it.
Yeah, Sailor just took so long. I mean, it's like.
Yeah, mine too. 24 hours is just not even possible to go through that for. But anyway, no, she did not. She never, when I decided to get the epidural, because once they started to tell me all the interventions I was going to have anyway, I was like, give me the epidural because I'm not doing this. And there was no judgment. It was nothing but support from her.
But the truth is, when somebody doesn't tell you how to be and doesn't project onto you any idea about how you should live your life, you want to be around that person. And that is why we all have asked our mom to be there for all of the births of all of our children, because she has never, in my entire life, she's never made it about her, and she's never projected. And neither did our dad. They didn't project. It wasn't like, I believe in this, therefore you need to believe in this, or I interested in this as a kid, so you should be interested in this. There was never any pressure to be anything to satisfy our parents. And as a result, all of us kids could not love being around our parents anymore, because in fact, we have always been free.
They were often saying like, okay, I'm going out tonight, you guys aren't invited, you know, when we were adults. But another thing that I touched on in the book at one point was, or we both did, our parents didn't parent us with guilt. And that's not something I realized till I was older, and I would see sometimes friends or whoever's parents would use guilt to get their kids to, you know, if you don't
spend time with them,
with me, who am I? I'm going to be alone, you know, things like that. Neither of our parents have ever done that. And it has drawn us to them more. You know, when you use guilt in any of your relationships, well, then the person is acting out of guilt, but not out of their own desires and free will. But because they didn't do that, we were constantly, we still are. Our mom is like, no, I'm not doing Sunday dinner today. And
we're like, okay, we'll be there at 3.
Yeah, we're coming over.
You're like, what are you can't cancel on us. Like,
So
but it's true. I mean, it's a reason why all of her children call her like at least once a day. And we're in a text chat, and she's on here right now. So
all day.
Yeah. That's how I am with my mom. We talk like probably like 3-4 times a day. Like,
yeah. And I think that for me as a mom with 3 little kids with very different personalities, and if there's anything that I've just really cherished, it's the experience of having 2 parents that followed the path that they felt called to follow. And they didn't tell me to go follow my dreams while they were sabotaging their own. They demonstrated what it means to fulfill your dharma with no apologies. And for me as a child witnessing that, I got on a subconscious level to do the same. And there is, because I have been asked this before, what is the greatest lesson that your father taught you or that you learned from your father? And it's like, it's not anything he said. It's that he did not compromise his own dreams while simultaneously telling me to go follow my own. He did his. He lived them with no apologies. And as children, we were not disappointed when he had to miss something of ours, because we loved seeing him do what he loved. And that is real love. And we were parented that way. We were raised that way. And as a parent, I can teach my children anything. It's that mommy's got work to do, and I'm just getting started. And that might mean that sometimes I have to lock the door and tell them no, which I had to do earlier. But I want to follow my own dreams too. And I want them to have a mother that's doing that. Right. And I want them to see it.
It gives them permission to do it for themselves, to be selfish. I think being selfish is important, you know.
And you said before, you're sober, I'm sober too, because of this realization that anything that gets in the way of fulfilling my dreams or my dharma my God, is it not worth it? I mean, it's so not worth it. And I was, I was doing that. I was doing things that were totally getting in the way of my path. And now that I've had that kind of like wake up call, I guess, or getting back in alignment with myself, it's like, wow, I don't want anything to take me away from whatever it is I came here to do. And I don't want my children to see me not doing whatever it is I came here to do. I want to fully show up for me, but also for them.
Yeah. Yeah. That, which is the most powerful thing I think that any of us can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's not too late. It doesn't matter if your child is 50 years old and you're 80. Mm-hmm. I mean, you go do what you feel called to do without apologizing. And I mean, as long as it doesn't harm somebody, right?
It reminds me of that, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but it's that story or that quote about, the man sets out and he wants to change the world, and he fails at that. So then he sets out and he wants to change his country, and he fails at that. And then he wants to change his town, and he fails at that. And then he wants to change his family. Nobody changes. And then he realizes, okay, the only thing I have control over is myself. So I'm going to change myself. And then that change resulted in a change in his family, in his town, in the world, because you only have power and control over yourself. You cannot push your desires on anybody else. And as parents, you can't do that to your kids. When you were a child, your parents could try to do that to you, but ultimately you're going to be doing what you need to do. And I just think the greatest gift you give to yourself and to the world is just being a little bit selfish, following your dreams, staying on your path, and that's how you change your family, help uplift other people. Anybody that you come into contact with. So
yeah, and it's really not selfish at the end of the day, because you're like, by prioritizing your passion and your gifts and what you're good at, like you end up serving other people, like what we were talking about,
exactly.
Right. That's what I mean. Of you are doing now through
when you put your energy into yourself, you're actually giving your energy to others, like what you do as well. It's like, don't apologize for having this insight and being able to always be in the flow, because you help other people get in the flow by just being that example of yourself.
Yeah. I have to tell you both. So I went through a phase where I had so much guilt I felt like I was like leaving people behind, or I felt like it was wrong to be as happy as I was, which sounds so weird. And it was after your dad died, like after I'd done readings for, a lot of you and brought him through a lot. And he showed up one time and he's like, you're not supposed to be doing that over there. Like, you're not supposed to be like, and he just was like, so like, he like popped in, like he was, I remember being like so confused that he was like, you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to do this. Like, just follow that advice and stop like fighting. And then he was gone. And I was like, what just happened?
Right.
But it was so like, it really like snapped me. I'm like, he's right though. Like this is the path of least resistance. Like, this is where I'm supposed to be.
You're supposed to be. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why you have, clients, but I would have said friends, because we're friends beyond just clients. You have people that get so much out of having a reading with you, because it's like, well, she's telling the truth, because you are in alignment with your truth. And it's like, of course it's real, and you just feel that when you talk to you. And I mean, I don't know how many people I have that have done a reading with you that afterwards you're like, oh my God. And
right.
But I think it's really because you are not saying, you're not compromising yourself. In other words, you're really just kind of like, this is who I am, and I'm just going to say it like it is. And I think it's really, I don't know, it's such a gift that you have.
Yeah,
and
inspiring.
I'm grateful for all the times you've like text me or Facebook messaged me and we're like, oh, your dad is saying this. And I'm like, wait, what? He is right now? Like, he can see me? Like,
yeah, he's rather bossy. He's like one of those ones that will be like, you text her. Like, I'm like, okay, I'm on. But it was funny because I was so upset when he passed, because he was on my vision board for so long. Like, it was such a huge goal of mine to meet him. And then he passed and I was like, really? Like,
right.
You know, like I haven't been able to meet you. And I mean, that was such a selfish moment, obviously, but like
But now you've met him so many times in so
right.
many cool ways that you never
in a
would
more
have, you know?
intimate way than
Yeah.
just taking a picture or something after a talk.
Yeah, like it's so funny. And my mom actually said to me, she was like, what if you get to do a reading for his family one day? And I was like, well, that would be really interesting. Like I had never, it wasn't like on my mind, you know, and like,
Yeah, no, and now you've done a reading for everyone in our family and me
Literally.
probably like 100 times.
yeah, and it's like it's so amazing to get to know him in this way, because his energy is just like, it's so much more incredible than like I could ever have even imagined, just like meeting somebody, you know, like face to face. Because you know, like he always comes and he like, whenever any of you are going to get a reading, like he wakes me up like clapping and like like he's like, get out of bed. Like he always wakes me up before my alarm goes off, because I'm not a morning person at all. And, like I'm like,
that's
okay,
exactly what he did to us as kids. Come on, let's go. I mean, that would be him clapping, racing us out the door. So it sounds
Turning
familiar.
lights on. We haven't even opened our eyes yet.
Yeah, it's so funny. So it's like it's always like just such a gift for me to bring him through. And then I remember like bringing Mason through too, and just to like, because I think that's so important what you were sharing about losing somebody young, still being, you know, on time, right? And that whole thought. And like, I remember Mason, before I did your husband's reading, was like making me like do jumping jacks or something like so random, like to get my energy up, because he had such a positive, like high energy, that I had to like get my body like prepared to bring him through.
Right. That doesn't surprise me.
Like,
I mean, he came here and I would say that he's, if not my greatest teacher, because it's so easy to love somebody that just adores you, right? My dad adored me and I knew that and I always felt that. So of course I loved him. But Mason really challenged me. And it's, I don't know, it's so much different for me at least. And I think the feeling of grief for Mason versus my dad. And I think that as I have come to know him from the other side, or from, you know, heaven or whatever you want to call it, I have really come to see that he came here with really big dharma to fulfill as well. And just because he didn't live to be 75 or have a global stage doesn't mean that it was any less enormous. And I feel him. I mean, we talk about him all the time. His room is, you know, still his room, and our children's room is right next to it, and he is a regular topic of conversation in our home, and I feel his joy and his lightness. And I mean, I really do. I'm not just saying that. And I feel my dad, so I feel like they're excited right now. Like, yes, this is what you should be talking about. This is what you should be doing, because I don't know. I just feel this energy of just like, exactly, when we place an attachment to what we view life as needing to be in order to be fulfilled, right? Like 100 years, right? That's our attachment. Life needs to be lived to be 100 in order for that person to have been fulfilled.
Right. Otherwise, it's just,
right. Yeah, it's just an idea that we have. It's got absolutely no bearing in truth. But we are so attached to that as a society. So losing Mason and having the experience of deciding that we were not going to view it as any less divine than the time that our dad left the earth, it made all the difference in the world.
Yeah. As it always does, it's a mindset, you know. And I mean, it's more than a mindset. I don't want to boil it down to that. It's a process, but I do think, you know, like we talked about throughout this conversation, it's choosing to see it in that way that brings you the peace, that starts to bring you the peace. It's one step at a time, one day at a time. It's not just like a magical snap, but I think that rearranging your thoughts into those of what Serena was just saying, that it is on time, that there is no an allotment of time that you have to fulfill. You know, just starting to think that way makes all the difference. It makes it so that you can feel them, experience them, receive signs, you know, because if you're stuck over here, this shouldn't have been this way. You're not going to be open just on the subconscious level to receiving from them.
And I wrote about that with you, actually, with my friend. I'm not going to say her name in case she's watching, but I wrote about that because she did a reading with you, and she was like, she was so closed off to connecting to her mom, who had passed away unexpectedly when she was a teenager. And she was like, I don't know. I mean, it was okay. It was good after her reading with you. And I remember it was like, I don't know, maybe 6 months or a year later. And she said, you're not going to believe this. And I'm thinking, of course I'm going to believe it. And she said, you're not going to believe this, but I actually asked my mom for a sign. First time she had ever even put it out there. And she got one immediately. And then she said, I went back and I listened to my recording that I made with Sarah Renee. And she said, oh my God, she was incredible. And she goes, she realized on her own, she said, I just wasn't ready to hear it. I just couldn't hear it. And it didn't matter that you were saying things that were real and that were accurate and that were things nobody else would have known. It didn't matter because she couldn't hear it yet. She wasn't in alignment with it. And then she opened herself up, like what Sage was saying. It's like she just started to just consider it as a possibility. And now she's, you know, thinks the world of you and feels very connected to her mom and dad, who both passed.
In so many different ways in life. It's like when the student is ready, the teacher appears. I mean, because I remember, you can hear something your whole life, and then you have a different experience, and you hear it again, and it resonates a totally different way. And it's when you're ready, and whenever that is okay, you know.
Yeah, and that's why people, I'm like, don't like force people to get readings with me, because if they're not ready, they're not
right.
Yeah. No, she wanted a reading with you, my friend. That did. You know, I didn't force her, but I think there's a lot of people. I saw my favorite Miss Veronica, my kid's teacher, was on here and saying, I want a reading with Sarah. Hi, Miss Veronica.
I see a lot of people saying that. I think you've got some things to
I think you have a lot of people on here that want a reading with you.
Yeah, actually, one thing that, you know, the quote that we've all heard a million times, there is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. It's from the Tao. I think we've all heard it a million times. And it didn't resonate with me until after I had my son. And I realized all these fear-based thoughts that I was having about becoming a mother and my life being over, my career being over, were not true. And that were just so based in like fear, you know, and it just dawned on me one day that there is no way to happiness. Being a mom isn't the way to happiness. Having a career isn't the way to happiness. You know, it's finding happiness in all of these things, all of these hats that we wear, finding purpose. I think you can replace the word purpose, to replace happiness with purpose too. It's finding your purpose and your happiness in everything that you're doing and in anything that life gives you, you know, that you find yourself in. And that's how we concluded the book, because I think it's so easy to think like, my happiness is 10 pounds away, 50 pounds away, whatever it is. My happiness is when I get a promotion and I can have more freedom because I have more money. And I think, you know, and it comes down to realizing that life is so full of twists and turns and, you know, and so much. And on one hand, life is happening to you, but on the other hand, it's responding to you. You know, there's the things that happens that are outside of your control, but then there's the part that you can control. And that's finding the happiness and the purpose in all the twists and turns. And that's really how I've tried to live my life since my dad passed away. And since it awakened a part of me that would not have been awakened had he not passed away. You know, so there's a part of me that has to be grateful for that experience, even though of course I would do anything to have him back, but that's not reality. So there's a gratitude in me for waking me up to this different part of my life. And then of course having my son was like this miracle that I resisted so much. I don't even know why. Like the whole time I was pregnant, I was like in denial that I was having a baby and that I would love him, and he's the love of my life. And
I was in total denial she was having a baby too, because I knew once she had her own, my children were not going to be the focus for her anymore, and I was going to lose my built-in babysitter. And I was like, oh my God, I'm having a third. I need you around.
Right.
She's aunts, you know, her and Sky are aunts of the year for sure. But
oh,
there's so
yeah, I mean, and I hear this all the time because I'm also, as I was saying before, a sober person, and I have heard this in meetings where people will say things like their whole identity of their addiction or their alcoholism is tied up in their idea that they had a bad childhood. And I'm sitting there like, I don't want anybody to know my last name, even though I'm outing myself right now. I don't want anybody to know I'm Wayne Dyer's kid, because they're going to think, what the F is wrong with you? You had this amazing childhood. And that drove that feeling of, why don't I have it all figured out? I had an incredible childhood where my parents told me that God looked out from behind my eyes. I mean, there was not a single aspect of my life where I was rejected. And I still felt shame. And I still did things that lined me up with more shameful experiences. And it wasn't until I really had to let go of that fear of not being worthy. It's like what Sage said. I know that Marianne Williamson quote, you know, who are you to, you know, your greatest fear is not that you are inadequate, it's that you are powerful beyond measure. I heard that logically. I understood it. But it wasn't until I faced myself and asked myself, why am I doing things day in and day out that cause me shame? And the answer I knew was, I am afraid of being worthy. It is my own light that scares me. It is my own greatness. And I think it's the exact same thing. I heard the quote, I knew it my whole life, but it never meant anything to me. Yeah, you have to experience it sometimes. And yeah, and I was ready, and now I'm, you know, sober over here. So
that's
and
so
look,
safe.
I can do an interview. I used to think that I couldn't. So I can do an interview, and I, you know, it would be so intimidating for me to expose myself in this way without relying on alcohol. And and now it's not, because I'm just kind of getting used to it. But it's all I can say to anybody out there that's afraid of something, whatever it is there a way that you can change the way you're looking at that fear? And the fear that you're looking at will change. At least that's the case for me and Sage, and I know you and our dad, obviously, because he came up with the phrase. So
yeah, that's so powerful. I know I always like work with clients, or like in my own practice, like to lean into the fear, to really like you said, to reframe it, instead of, because you give it power when you're just like, oh no, stay over there.
Right.
You know, when you really like look at it.
Yeah. And in the book, we actually changed that quote. We didn't change it, but we said it's not just change the way you look at things, challenge the way you look at things, you know, take, you know, because it's not always just so simple as like, oh, let me just snap my fingers and now I can look at this differently. It's a process, and it's
say the whole phrase, because somebody's asking for you to say the whole phrase.
When you challenge, our dad's quote was, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. But we wrote about how that's so true, but it's not just a change in an instant. So we said it's when you challenge the way you look at things, the things you look at change, because it takes work. It's not magic, you know, it's a commitment. It's an undoing one step at a time, and opening yourself up a little bit at a time. And sometimes there's these amazing, miraculous moments, but other times it takes work.
Or sometimes you're like me and you think that because you are Wayne Dyer's kid, you're going to have an instant awakening, and you're like, why is my miracle not here yet? And you don't put in any of the work. And that was I've talked to you about my desire to get sober, and that was my experience. Was like, I just want this to be fixed for me. I just want somebody to come in and fix it for me, and I'm going to have an instant awakening, and the miracle is just going to like plop in my lap because I'm going to align with it. That's really what I thought. And it wasn't until I really started contemplating that I had to change myself, and I had to change the way I just went about my I don't know, my willingness to do the work, to put my hand out to God and say, can you help me? Or to say, I'm showing up for you. I'm here now and I'm ready to do the work. Can you guide me? You know, but before it was like, I just want to party until God just is like, poof, you're better and you're fine and everything's cured. You know, I thought I could have that.
Yeah, totally. And I think too, like sometimes people skip over that, like coming into alignment with something, like when you come into alignment with it, sometimes the next step before getting it is doing the work, like that you come into alignment with being able to then do the work. It's not just like poof.
Right. Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, that's why our dad,
poof, you know, I think it is totally aligning with the commitment to change, you know?
He used to say all the time, it's row, row, row your boat. You have to row your own goddamn boat. And nobody's going to do the rowing for you. It's not your mom's job to row it for you. It's not your teacher's job. Row your boat gently down the stream. Go with the flow gently. Be easy on yourself. But he would take that song and he would explain it as though you have to show up and be willing to row your own boat. Daddy can't row it for you. And you know, I would never have understood that if he hadn't died and I had everything fall apart in my life and had to really experience it for myself. I would have been insufferable. I would have been a monster. I would have been like, everything just falls into place for me because I'm so great. And I would not have known what it really means to row your own boat.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Oh, I feel like that's I could talk to you girls for hours, but I'm like looking at the time. I'm like, I think I have to let you go, get to the kids, and like.
My son's banging on the door. I'm in his.
I heard him.
So I'm keeping him from his bedtime at the moment. So
yeah,
I just cut it here soon. But I agree. We could keep going on and on and on. It's been great.
Yeah.
Can we repost this on our Instagram pages?
Yes.
Is it only on when it's live?
No, she'll save it.
Yeah, I'm going to save it and post it, and then you will be able to share it.
Repost
Okay,
it.
cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, because it's so good. And just for everyone, if you haven't gotten it, go to Amazon and order The Knowing. And if you have read it, go leave a review, because I know from my book how important those are, and they really matter. So leave a good review.
And if you haven't gotten a reading with Sarah Renee, contact her, because it's life-changing.
Why are you not showing your book?
Yeah.
I know, like, I have my book. I'll get
and
it.
It's incredible. I wrote the foreword for it because I loved it so much. I basically asked her if I could. So
yeah. Yes, and go order the Blessings book. I also have a workbook. Serena wrote the foreword to this, and that link is in my bio on this page, and also the link to ask a question about getting a reading is in there too. So do all that there, and yay, this was so fun. I'll have to do it again one of these days.
Definitely. This was awesome.
Yeah.
I promise I'll talk less next time and let you get a word in. I get so excited.
I think we all talked pretty equally. You're all right.
Yeah, I was like,
I feel like I
we
interrupted
all
you
just
a
like
bunch.
went off. Like
I
didn't even look at my outline that I like tried to.
Well, I just felt like I interrupted you, Sage. Like every time I would get so excited when you would say something, I'd be like, yeah, like a chihuahua. Like
I wanted me once where it pissed me off, but the rest were fine.
Oh.
Okay. Sorry for that once. At least it was only once this time.
Say one time,
Okay.
like, that's pretty good.
Yeah, one time for sisters. Are you kidding?
not
She's
bad.
9 months pregnant. Everything pisses her off. It's like,
Yeah,
True.
and you're a Gemini like me, so we talk a lot.
Yeah.
We're talkers. So
she's a Scorpio. So.
Oh yeah, because you guys are the same. Because my sister, I'm a Gemini, and she's a Scorpio, and
Oh, really?
we're super close. Even though usually our signs I don't think would get along, but we're like best friends. So.
Well, Sage is obsessed with me. I put up with her, but.
Please. Serena.
She's like, right.
Just kidding.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. We love you.
Thank you. I love you both. And thank you everyone for watching and commenting. Like the support is just amazing. So
yeah, no, I can't wait to go back and read some of these comments because you can't read while you're talking. So
I know I'm like trying to like, everything's been like super like happy and supportive,
yeah,
resonant. So
totally.
yeah. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
thank you, Sarah.
Good
we
night.
love you, and we're
Thank
so
you.
glad that we could do this.
Yes, thank you so much. I love you both, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
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 Bye.